Business on Purpose podcast, episode number 78. Welcome into the Business on Purpose podcast. And no, I am not in a concert hall, even though it might sound like it. We are actually at one of the local conference rooms that we use. And I just got done interviewing Jared Buckley, who I'm going to introduce you to here in just a minute. Had a great conversation. And I wanted to get you in on this. If you work with millennials, if you have millennials working for you, if you know a millennial, if you've seen a millennial, if you've heard about millennials, you need to listen to our conversation today. Hey, it's brought to you by the 4 Steps to Business Freedom, where we have the privilege of being able to liberate small business owners from the chaos of working in your business. And we've got some pretty cool stuff coming up, including the 4 Steps Professional Certification. That's right. For those of you who are looking to actually do coaching for small business owners, we've taken the 4 Steps framework and are currently putting it into an opportunity to where you can actually deliver it and bring value to other small business owners who need it. We realized that we were to a point where we can only help so many small businesses. And quite frankly, there are a lot more who need it. And there are some of you who want to be able to bring that. So we'll have more information on that. If you go to 4stepstobusinessfreedom.com, you'll see the layout of the program. But that's what we wanted to talk to you about before we got into our conversation with Jared Buckley this week, who's going to talk about millennials in the conversation that we have here. So sit tight and enjoy this one. And by the way, hang tight till the end. He gives you a free offer that's awesome. You need to take advantage of it. All right, here's my conversation this week with my buddy, Jared Buckley. All right, so Jared Buckley, we want to be doing business on purpose. We've got to have the fellowship of other people to help us explore all kind of new ideas and to see what we may otherwise not be able to see. So, all the way out in sunny Arizona, Jay Buck, are you ready to take us on a tour of how you do business on purpose?
Hey, let's buckle up.
Nice. All right. Somebody else told me one time, buckle up, buttercup. I was a little offended, but that's all right. Hey, man, in doing business on purpose, one of the foundations that we've really locked in on in the Business on Purpose platform and the podcast is God's word is not only anchored, it's transformational, and it's truth-filled. What it says has incredible power. It's got relevance for every element of business, and it's quite immovable. So for you, is there a verse or a quote of some sort that really motivates you to be in business on purpose?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I actually got 2 of them, and for 2 different reasons.
You're an overachiever, so I'd expect nothing less.
So Ephesians 2:8-10 is a kind of a go-to, and it says, "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not from yourselves, it is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." And that's just, we hear that verse, and I love that verse because it's utilization of God's gifts and God's talents, and we're here to do a work. And so I love that. But the other one is just flip the page. It's on Ephesians 3 verse 20. And actually, the whole section of Ephesians 3:14-21 is a prayer that I memorized when I was going through some challenging times with our kids. And verse 20 in particular sticks out to me all the time. And it's, "Now to him who's able to do immeasurably more than all I ask or imagine, according to the power that is at work within us." So those 2 verses kind of cement me in what I do in business, really, in life in general.
That's awesome. Yeah, in knowing a little bit of your background and your story and all of that, I can completely see where those would fit in, and I appreciate the power. That second verse that you mentioned is so, both of them obviously have great power, but that second one is one I continue to go back to. So do this, Jared. You've got a rich family background. You've got kind of a rich history even at such a young age. Give us a chance to hear from you as a person. So give us a minute or 2 on a personal background, and then we'll take some time to get into the details of how you do business on purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thanks for the question, just because it really integrates to very much of what I do with business and with life and family. And Just a quick background. I have 4 little kids. 2 out of 4 of ours had open heart surgery. Our oldest was born with Down syndrome, and that's where that verse I mentioned before came from when we were going through that, because our little girl was given a 60% chance to survive through pregnancy, and that was one of the biggest challenges I've ever gone through in my life, and it taught me a lot about leadership, taught me a lot about communication, and a lot about going through change. And that was pretty phenomenal. We have a very active house with those 4 kids, and I am married to Superwoman. She is, every time I say this, people think, well, isn't that offensive to say about a woman? She's a stud. She's just straight up a stud. And she was a D1 softball player. She's competitive. She's an RN. And we have an amazing family, and I'm very blessed to have gone through what we've gone through and to be able to see life in a very unique way. So that's a little background of kind of where I've been.
Talk about, I'm a word guy, so you use the word unique, and the uniqueness of the background. What the color, the flavor, that uniqueness. How do you see the world differently than maybe I do, or other people who don't have the family setup that you have? Explain that uniqueness, that richness a little bit.
Oh, such a great question. Really such a great question, because I have a lot of passion behind that answer. So when we started going through all that we went through back in 2010, my eyes, or actually 2009, I'm sorry. My eyes opened up to see the details of life, because what happens is we get in the flow of what we really term as normality, and where God's blessings a lot of times happen are in the margins of life. And if you step outside of that flow of that normality and start seeing the uniqueness, the things that just maybe aren't normal. And if you think about it, the characteristics of a little girl with Down syndrome is they're passionate, they are overjoyed, they're forgiving. And you start going deeper and deeper. You start actually characterizing who God is, which is really interesting.
Wow.
And so that part of it, I started seeing things. It started slowing down life around me instead of getting to the next point, to the next point, to the next point. I started slowing down to see the beauty that surrounds us every day and the unique gifts and abilities.
Wow. Interesting perspective. So I love the background from a personal standpoint. Jared, let's move into some business stuff. Take us on the inside of your business. Give us a kind of a proverbial backstage pass to the professional side of Jared Buckley, and tell us what and why you do what you do.
Yeah. So a little background is I was in ministry for about 10 years. And during that time, I also coached high school sports. And those two are pretty pivotal in what I do now, because I spent the last really 15 years, starting in college, 15 years working with millennials. And with that background, I never used the term really millennials until people started mentioning it to me, because it was just who I was leading, who I was coaching. There was no uniqueness to it. It was just people. And so as I started getting questions about this generation, I realized I had an insight that a lot of people wanted. They wanted to understand behaviors. They want to understand motivation. And so I started sharing. And after I started my own business, and coming out of ministry, I started a little business up in Utah, and I hired 4 millennials, and I never had a problem. I mean, obviously I had the typical employee problem, but it never was detrimental to our business. And because I knew how to connect with them, I knew how to draw out of them the best of their ability. That's how I got into the business that I'm in right now, which is coaching, consulting, and training with businesses to better develop the skills of the millennial generation.
And it's so funny. You and I have had conversations about this before, about how you'll talk to a guy that's, 38 years old, 52 years old, or a lady that's 47 years old. She owns a business, and you say, "Hey, millennial." You just say that word, and they go, "Oh." It was so funny last night as we're talking right now. Ashley and I, we had gone out. One of our kids was at practice, so we swung by and had a little impromptu date at one of the local restaurants, just kind of sitting casually. And this guy comes up next to us, and he's got all the marks, right? He's just propping the stereotype. His hair is professionally gelled. The beard is perfectly groomed. He both tells, and just the paradox of this, but he both tells the person at the place, we're at kind of a pizza place, and said, "I need a gluten pizza, please," which was the first, right? But then right after begins to smoke begins vaping. And I'm like, never mind. Let me just call Jared, and I'll ask him what all that means, because I don't get it. And so we get that a lot. And so within this world of millennials, and listen, I am a huge fan. Jessie on our team is a millennial, and she is awesome. And we've got other millennials that we do some work with and through and partner with and all of that, and they're great. They also come with their own unique set of challenges, as people in their 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s do. So we've all got our peculiarities. Right. So give us kind of the Jared Buckley, kind of the stance on millennials, and talk to us about that culture just a little bit. And then I want you to take us behind the curtain and give us a pain point. Now, this is something that you've solved, because I'm going to ask you a different version of this later, but this is a pain point that you've solved and you've gotten over the hump. So I want you to talk to us about the wisdom around that, but see if you could do that within the context and laying the groundwork of the millennial generation.
Yeah, let's take a stab at this. So the millennial generation, and one of the things you said is absolutely correct. And the fact that every generation and every people group, you're going to have a uniqueness to them to some extreme, right? And so there's something in their generation or the people group, whatever it is, there's a uniqueness to this. However, what also stands out about the millennial generation is they're very, very diverse. And they actually capitalize on this diversity and uniqueness. So imagine your prototypical stereotyped millennial coming into the pizza place, and he is just going all out on his stereotypes, right? He's capitalizing on all of them.
Check.
Well, he's check, exactly. And what typically he's doing is he's trying to make a stand that he's different, because there's a lot of value to the millennial generation of diversity. So they will overemphasize that uniqueness. Now, think back when Gen Xers were this age and baby boomers were this age. How different is that? Because you're talking about a young 20-year-old who's trying to be unique in this world. It's kind of the age dynamic, not as much the generation dynamic. However, I understand what you're talking about. I had a conversation last night with a GM of a hotel, and I mentioned millennials, and she says, "Oh gosh, please don't get me started." and that is a typical response, and that's where I'm going to tie into this challenge. One of the things that I have to do is be able to address the millennial concept without getting people to withdraw. Because there's a lot of times where business owners and business leaders hear the word millennial and they just disengage. They go, I don't even want to talk about it because I don't even want to hire them. So for me, in a business sense, I can't help that business if they're disengaged from the millennial generation. So I have to be able to keep them engaged with a very big generation that's going to influence the future of their business. Like it, love it, hate it, I don't care. You got to deal with it. So what do? Well, I start to tie in their value set. Okay, what can they bring to the business? What uniqueness can they bring of value to your business if they come in? Then we move into, okay, how do we develop them? I mean, at the end of the day, and Scott, you and I both agree on training and developing employees is crucial to the growth of business. This is what I'm all about, and mine is geared around the skill sets. So the soft skills, the emotional intelligence. If you don't know what that is, just type in emotional intelligence. You'll read it all over the internet. It is one of the biggest concepts of leadership right now, and there is a deal about the millennial generation. Their number one desire is to be trained, developed, coached, mentored.
Not money.
Not money. Meaning, if you invest energy, time, I'm not necessarily saying money, just take time and energy, you will start to draw up a loyalty from this millennial generation and capitalizing on their productivity. And tell me one business owner that does not want that. So
great point.
That's kind of where I tackle my biggest hang up is the millennial generation. And my biggest solve to that is connecting people. Just realizing this is a value set of people. They might be different, but they're people, and they're the future of your business.
Interesting. All right, so let's dive into your business particularly. I want to move into the part of the program where we really like to kick it up a notch and begin to move at the speed of business. So we want to invite you into our well-designed, well-placed, well-located Business on Purpose boardroom where we ask some thoughtful questions, some simple responses, and then one major takeaway. So here's the first one, Jared. How do you, or how would you, like to begin intentionally seeing transformation in the lives of the people who your business affects?
First things first is always getting to the core of who people are. Simon Sinek, who maybe we could talk about this, that had a quite popular video that came out about millennials. He wrote his book that really got him on the map, Start With Why. I have another concept, start with who. If you look at the person, you look at the identity, which is shaped by values, principles, characteristics. If you look at the who of a business, not only the person, but the business itself, you begin to enter transformation in a very, very deep way. The why attacks the heart. The who attacks a person. It actually goes right after it. And that's where transformation starts to happen. So I go after the who first.
Interesting. Okay. Interesting. So let's lead this into another question I've got for you, and that is, what do you feel like right now is the greatest myth in business?
I would probably have to say it maybe it's not a myth, but I think it's a hurdle. Let's position it that way. Change. I mean, we encounter change all the time in business, and it's increasing, and it's one of the biggest struggles that businesses go through right now, and it's not slowing down. And so this concept of I've done business the way I've done it for the last 20 years just doesn't really work. And we have to understand that change is all around us. Now, there are principles and values that you can keep in place, but the operational side of it and the development side of it is changing. That needs to change. And so you can't sit there and say, well, we've done this for the last 35 years. Okay, you can do some of what you've done for the last 35 years, but you can't do all of what you've done for the last 35 years. So that's probably the biggest myth or hurdle that I see with businesses today.
Yeah, no doubt about it. To kind of put down here in quotes, it's the way we've always done it. And in that mindset, I was listening to a TED Talk the other day that featured Yuval Noah Harari, who's recently written a book. I forget the name of it. It's like Homo Duos or something like that. He wrote the really popular book Sapiens, and he was talking in this talk about nationalism versus globalism and how there's this great political divide and how 2016 was a huge shift to nationalism. I mean, you look at Brexit in England, you look at the election of Trump in the United States, and you see all of this stuff. And he said what amazed him the most was that everybody kept saying, hey, the Mexicans are going to come take your jobs, the Peruvians are going to come take your jobs, all these people are going to take your jobs. And he said, not once did I hear that the robots are going to come take your jobs. He said, if you look in the future, it's not the Mexicans or the Americans or the Canadians or the Russians or the Turks who are going to come take your job. It's the robots who are going to come take their jobs. And so this idea of a complete myth busting that, hey, we just need to mitigate change. We need to kind of slow this thing down. We need to go back to the way it's all been done. And, no knock on anybody who is named Trump, for Trump, voted for Trump or whatever, but we realized that the slogan was "Make America Great Again," not so much a futuristic look as to what's coming. And so it almost lends itself, and I've never declared who we voted for, so nobody knows who we voted for. We could or could not have voted for Trump. But the declaration that I think the whole world right now is at a bit of a freeze because of that myth that we believe if we can just go back to X, then we'll be okay. Have you found that the millennial mindset, are they a mind that wants to go back, or are they a mind that is more forward-leaning?
Okay, this is a great point. Great point. And hardly ever I hear someone ask this question. They actually want to go back. They love the values and the traditions of old. They start looking, and one of the things that has been observed is the millennial generation actually ties a lot to the traditionalist generation, which is interesting if you think about it. Because on the surface of everything, people are looking and go, no, there's no way. That's not even possible. Well, you got to also think about it. Traditionalists were kids of the Great Depression. Millennials were also kids of the recession and also 9/11, which plays a big role in actually who they develop to be. And so with that being said, I mean, in everything that you were saying, I kind of want to tie into, because I loved where you're going with it, with AI. Here's the thing about business. One of the things that we have to understand is the more that technology and software replace the jobs that typically have been occupied by people, which it will happen. Like it, love it, hate it, I don't care. It will happen. But what that actually does take away is the interpersonal connection. Meaning now, instead of interpersonal skills being developed off of osmosis, you're actually going to have to train for it and coach it, because they're not going to get it just in their everyday life. So you actually have to design for them still to have that interpersonal skills, because that will always be important to business. It's just they're not going to have it developed like it was developed 50 years ago. Yeah.
It doesn't happen. It doesn't develop on playgrounds. And so, I heard somebody say, and see if you agree with this, it was actually Fareed Zakaria with GPS. He's a CNN contributor, brilliant mind in global affairs and all that. He said, as we grow over the next few years, we're going to see that the humanities degrees are so much more important, because the kids are not going to be able to learn these kind of back and forth humanity ideas on the playground. They're going to have to learn them somewhere else. And so we're going to have to start. I mean, do you agree with that? Do you think that that's something that we've literally got to start to kind of put in curriculums, instead of just trusting that that's going to be taken care of on the playgrounds and in the backseat of cars and all of that?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I believe we're behind already. Wow. And we are not seeing the fruition of that lack of development yet, because that's already been happening. And you got to think about it. This generation coming up is behind on times with that. There's a reason why homeschooling has developed over the last 5-10 years, because they've realized that we have to customize the way that we train and develop our kids, because it's not happening in school. I mean, you're seeing parents that are diehard sports fans pulling their kids out of sports because they're not getting what they should develop in sports. I mean, you're seeing a complete change of development, and it's really running towards customization. It's customizing how we do stuff instead of putting them into a system, because the system can have a lot of flaws, and a lot of parents are realizing that.
So translate that into business now. I mean, if that's the case in the younger years, translate that to now you've got a 26-year-old employee. What does that mean?
Your onboarding process and your leadership training process that has worked for the last 20 years, you're pretty much going to throw that out. And you're going to have to realize that your development and your training of your next future leaders is going to be customized.
All right. So talk to, and God, it's so hard not to ask you, okay, Jared, so systematize the customization,
Right.
So let's talk key elements instead. What are some of the key elements that need to be in play within the customized approach to onboarding and training millennials?
Great question. Google back in 2009 came out with Project
I thought you were going to tell
Oxygen.
me to Google it. I was like, no, you're here. Okay, so you're talking about Google. Gotcha.
So Google back in 2009 came out with Project Oxygen, and it was a long endeavor of them applying people analytics and employee survey and employee feedback, trying to figure out how they did business best. And what they came out to realize is their business was developed on the backs of their frontline managers. And they realized that their best managers weren't the ones that were coding the best. Their best managers were the ones that knew how to have that interpersonal skills, which surprised them. In fact, those managers, the best managers, didn't do the quote unquote Google thing the best. And so here's the thought to that, and this is why I apply it. You have to have a system in place that actually goes after your business's objectives. And I know, Scott, you're going to be drooling after I say all this. Okay, so you have to go over the objectives, the values, the purpose, the mission. Your customization has to be aligned specifically to your business. It's not going to be a Google leadership development or an IBM or just throw whatever name, GE, I don't care. You can't actually jump on the back of these big businesses and say, well, they did it, we should do it that way. It's not going to work. You got to know who your business is, who your people are, and what customers you serve. Think about the increased marketing talk about niching. It's the same thing that we're going to see about employees. There's a reason why gig economy is kicking up. That's called customization. And so you're going to see the future of business start to be really customized, and you're going to have to know your business inside and out. You're going to need to know what you're going after, and that's all going to tie into the development of your employees. You don't need to develop the next engineer if you're doing or dealing with customer service primarily. You don't need, specific skills to what your business is.
Because those can be learned on the job. So what you're saying is what's going to be critical over the next coming years, well, I would even argue that now it's super critical, is the ability to bring somebody in and say, okay, we can teach you the technical side of this. What you need to be equipped in when you come in, you need to understand how to smile at people, how to say hello to people, how to not be a jerk. You need to understand those kind of softer skills when you come in, because those are harder to teach. Whereas the technical stuff, we can teach you a lot of that on the job. We can work with that stuff with you. Is that kind of what you're saying now, is that the company can take care of the technical side of it? What we need to be doing pre-company or onboarding is we need to be handling a lot of the softer skills to teach people how to work with people.
Right. And let me, this is obviously, it's not a sell to me being a coach or you being a coach.
I was just about to tell you, this is great news for guys like you and me.
But if you sit here and think about sports, you and I, we're big sports fans, right? And okay, look at the NFL. The draft is a third of the process of a great player. But everybody puts so much weight on that draft process and say, oh, did you draft XYZ? Jared Goff was drafted number 1 overall last year, and he's got some issues right now. The Rams have some issues. The other 2/3 is the development. Now, part of that is what you're talking about, the technical skills. So the things that are actually, I see that. But the other part is the intangible skills. And there's a lot of people who sit here and talk about intangible skills. Oh, well, you can't teach that. That's not true.
Yeah, you have to.
You have to. People didn't just develop intangible skills. That didn't just happen. They were taught. They learned. They grew. They were in the right environment. Fill in the blank. And so the actual competitive advantage is a business that knows how to develop those intangible skills.
That's the money right there. That's no doubt about that. I mean, it's got to be, is the intangible skills, which, like I said, is great news for guys like you and me, because we can go in and help build those sorts of things, and they do have to be customized. So do this. Give us a book idea, Jared. What or who should the Business on Purpose listener be reading right now to help them kind of think through this?
Oh, gosh. Well, let me just say this. I have 3 books that are on my desk right now, and that's Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman, Working with Emotional Intelligence by Goleman, and The EQ Edge. Those 3 books, I mean, I'm living in them right now. Here's the problem, though. Those are really deep and sometimes a little more scientific. The Working with Emotional Intelligence or The Primal Leadership by Daniel Goleman, those are 2 really good ones. And those actually are more applicable to leadership development and not over scientific or over analyzing the emotional intelligence on the anatomy and the brain and all that stuff. So Primal Leadership and Working with Emotional Intelligence are probably a little more geared toward the business owner.
Okay. Primal Leadership. And the second one? Working with
Emotional Intelligence.
Working with Emotional Intelligence. All right. I'm making a note of those here. Just make sure to go on our website. You'll see it under there. If you go to mybusinessonpurpose.com/podcast, we'll have all the links for you with everything that Jared is mentioning here. This is so helpful to be able to understand this. All right, do this. This is one of our final questions that I like to ask, and that is, Jared, give us a major challenge that you have in your business right now that is not currently solved. So you talked about a challenge earlier and how you're overcoming that, but give us a challenge right now that you're working through right now, and it is not solved, but man, you would love to move that into the solution stage.
It's a business, right? And so as any business, market, right? And so getting that business to come, one of the things for the industry that we're in with coaching and consulting, a lot of it has to do with relationships. I mean, you're not going to sit there and just sell a product necessarily. It's me building those relationships with business owners because I want to help them in deep ways. I don't want to just come and provide you a product because I need to make money. I want to help businesses. I want to help them help people, help communities, help change lives. So that takes a deep work. And so for me, building any business, that's really what you're going after is building that customer base, that client base. Mine is I want to build that relationally tight client base that I'm taking into the next 10, 15 years, making an impact that is far beyond themselves.
Man, this is so good. There are going to be, I'm hoping, a number of people. If you have millennials on your team, you got to reach out. You got to ask questions about this because it's a constant. Here's what I have taken away, Jared, just from what you've said. If you can learn to work with, it's going to do amazing things for your business. If instead you want to be hostile towards, it's going to do amazing things to your business the other way. And so taking the time to learn about this, to become a student of people, is such a high value. And I mean, let's even talk about it in context of Business on Purpose. I mean, good grief, what did Jesus do? What did he value? He valued traveling around, and he valued being in discussions with other people and what they saw. And so we've got to be able to emulate that within our business. And the good news is we have a platform to do it. It's up to you. You don't have to wait on them to decide. You can go ahead and make that decision and do something about it. Jared, do this. We like to exchange some business cards on the show so people can find out where you are, how to get in touch with you. So how can we do that? Website, book, email, whatever. What do you have for the Business on Purpose listener to be able to get in touch with you?
Well, first off, I mean, if somebody want to connect with me with LinkedIn, Twitter, that's pretty easy. I mean, just find me, Jared Buckley. Twitter handle is Jared Buckley, and LinkedIn, I'm Jared F as in Frank Buckley, and you'll see me. Or you can go to my website, jaredbuckley.com. Jared, Jared, Buckley, BUCKLEY.com. Also, if this is okay with you, Scott, and you can let me know, I mean, part of what I do is people analytics, and I use assessments. I use DISC, and Scott, I know you use DISC as well. The one that I use actually has a combination assessment, and so it actually goes into behaviors and motivators and combines that to start to understand people. And so if anybody's interested, and it's a good way for me to connect with people, I'll provide a free assessment for anybody that, let's go with, goes at jaredbuckley.com/BOP.
Awesome.
So it stands for Business on Purpose. It'll just be a little lead page there. You can sign up, and it'll give you the link, and I'll give you a free 30-minute debrief afterwards. It's, pretty simple. And it's a great way for us to connect too.
That is awesome. That is a huge deal. Make sure to take advantage of that. Go to jaredbuckley.com/BOP. For Business on Purpose, Jared's a killer guy. He and I have gotten to know each other really well over this last year, and that's why I wanted to have him on, because he's got unique insight into what a lot of you are having to work through and think through as it relates to millennials. And so, Jared, this has been great. Guys, if you stop learning, you stop living. And today we've been able to learn from Jared Buckley, or the J-Buck, as we like to call him, about how to be in business on purpose. Jared, thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
So there you go, Jared Buckley. I mean, the guy gets it, right? As it relates to millennials and understanding the emotional intelligence. My goodness, that offer he made at the end. Make sure to head on over to jaredbuckley.com/BOP for Business on Purpose. Sorry about the pee-pop there into the mic. I don't have my mic filter today. But anyway, we had fun nonetheless. Don't forget to go check out 4stepstobusinessfreedom.com. While you're up there, head on over to the headquarters, mybusinessonpurpose.com. We've got some brand new testimonials, some case studies of small business owners just like you who are being liberated from the chaos of working in their business. It's our delight to do it right here every week. We'll see you right here next week on the Business on Purpose podcast.